Hello children, in the last lecture we have studied something about the mechanism of gaseous exchange between the tissues and the blood in the process of respiration. Now we are going to discuss something about the cellular respiration. Actually, cellular respiration refers to the oxidation of food taking place inside the cells. So actually cellular respiration works, it is the process of oxidation of food inside the cells. Since this process occurs at the cellular level, so it is called as cellular respiration. Actually, cellular respiration takes place in 3 steps. So there are 3 steps of cellular respiration. The first step is called as glycolysis. First step can be called as glycolysis. Second step is called as a Krebs cycle. And the third step is called as ETS. This can also be called as an electron transport system. Now let us discuss these in detail. Now glycolysis. Let me take the first step, that is called as a glycolysis. This glycolysis, it can also be called as a EMP pathway, and glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm of cell. In this cycle, the glucose is converted into pyruvic acid in the presence of many enzymes and coenzymes. Oxygen is not required in this process, and there is no production of carbon dioxide during this process. Okay children, now we'll actually show all these 3 steps in a manner of chart also. Now let me tell you something about the second step. That second step is called as a Krebs cycle. The site of Krebs cycle is mitochondria. It occurs in the mitochondria of the cell. Krebs cycle is also called as a aerobic respiration, since it was discovered by a scientist known as Hans Krebs. His name is Hans Krebs. That is why it is called as a Krebs cycle. Another name of this cycle is, it can also be called as a TCA cycle. It is also called as a TCA cycle, that is tricarboxylic acid cycle. It can also be called as a citric acid cycle. Now what happens in this Krebs cycle? It actually brings about the conversion of pyruvic acid and fatty acids, fats and amino acid into carbon dioxide and water. So pyruvic acid ultimately get converted into carbon dioxide and water by a series of cycles, by a series of processes, and that can be counted as a cycle. It is a common path for oxidation of carbohydrates, fats and proteins. Now, electron transport system. The third step is electron transport system. In this, hydrogen atoms which are produced during oxidation of various intermediate during Krebs cycle are first broken into protons and electrons. They get converted into protons and electrons Now these protons and electrons, after passing through a series of coenzymes and cytochromes, combines with oxygen to form water molecules. Now these protons and electrons, after passing through a series of cytochromes, they combine with oxygen to form water molecules. So this occurs in electron transport system. Now we can diagrammatically also represent the main two steps of respiration, that is glycolysis and Krebs cycle, and this can be represented like this. Carbohydrates, they get converted into glucose, and this process occurs during digestion. Now this glucose again gets converted into pyric acid, and this process can be called as glycolysis. Now this pyric acid, it oxidizes. It can be oxidized in the presence of oxygen also, or in the absence of oxygen also. So two ways it can be oxidized. If it is oxidizing in the absence of oxygen, then it is called as anaerobic respiration, and the byproducts are C2H5OS, that is ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide, and ATP. This occurs mostly in the yeast cells, and this can also be called as a fermentation process. Another type of anaerobic respiration occurs in the muscles. This is anaerobic respiration. Another type of anaerobic respiration that occurs in the muscles, and if it occurs in the muscles, the end products are lactic acid and 2 molecules of ATP are produced. Here also the molecules are 2 ATP molecules. Now these are both type of anaerobic respiration. If it is a case of aerobic respiration, then what will happen, children? This pyric acid, this is what? This is aerobic respiration. In case of aerobic respiration, this pyric acid, this will completely get converted into carbon dioxide, water, and ultimately 38 ATP molecules are produced. And both these two types of respiration, they are called as the anaerobic respiration. Now this was the diagrammatic representation of the main two steps of cellular respiration. Now let me talk something about the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide. How these gases are getting transported, in what form. So the next topic is transportation of carbon dioxide and oxygen. Let me talk first about the oxygen. Now the oxygen that diffuses into the blood from the lungs is transported to various body tissues in the following form. First form is about 97% of the oxygen diffuses into the blood and combines with hemoglobin, and it forms what? Oxyhemoglobin. So 97% of the oxygen is transported with the help of what? Oxyhemoglobin. On the other hand, the remaining 3% of oxygen, it dissolves in water, of plasma, or we can say 3% of the oxygen is carried through plasma of blood. Now this together completes what? 100% of the oxygen. Whatever oxygen has been inhaled, 97% of that is transported in the form of oxyhemoglobin, and 3% is transported in the form of plasma. Now, internal or tissue respiration. Internal or tissue respiration. The next topic is internal. That was, we have talked about, was the what? That was the cellular respiration. Now internal or tissue respiration. Actually, exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the blood and body tissues is called as internal or tissue respiration. The oxygen from the blood diffuses into the body tissues, whereas carbon dioxide from the tissues to the blood, because of the higher concentration of carbon dioxide in the body tissues, produced due to cellular respiration. Now this way we can represent it as, this is the capillary wall and these are the body cells or mitochondria. These are the body cells. Now from body cells, what is coming? Carbon dioxide is coming to the alveoli. This is carbon dioxide. From alveoli, the oxygen is getting released into the body cells. This is oxygen. This is called as the internal respiration or exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and body tissues. Now, cellular respiration. The biological oxidation of glucose in cells is called as cellular respiration, and the main equation for the cellular respiration. For this we can write the main equation as carbohydrate, that is C6H12O6 plus oxygen, and it will give rise to 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus 36 ATP. This is the equation for cellular respiration, and this is a reversible reaction. It can be reversed also. So the oxidation of glucose actually is a multi-step process, and it is completed in a series of chemical reactions. Each step is catalyzed by a particular enzyme. The energy released as a result of oxidation of glucose is stored in the form of ATP molecules. Water, being an important part of body, is retained in the body. Carbon dioxide, being toxic beyond certain limit, is to be eliminated. Blood is the medium of transport of oxygen from the respiratory organ to different tissues and carbon dioxide from tissues to the respiratory organs. As much as 97% of the oxygen is transported from the lungs to tissues in combination with hemoglobin, and only 3% is transported, as I already told you, in the form of dissolved plasma. Now, there are few important points, children, related to this chapter. Actually, these points should be noted like this. A normal person has about 15 grams of hemoglobin is present in per 100 ml of blood, and this is the exact proportion of a normal person who is not having any abnormality. This is a normal condition, and actually 1 gram of hemoglobin can be represented by HB. 1 gram of hemoglobin, it binds about 1.34 milliliters of oxygen. Thus, so 100 ml of blood carry about 20 ml of oxygen. You can calculate this. This is most simple. Now, actually, carbon dioxide is also transported by hemoglobin. When a respiring tissue releases carbon dioxide, it is first diffused into the plasma. From here, it diffuses into the red blood cells. Carbon dioxide is transported from tissues to the lungs in the form of bicarbonates dissolved in water. So, actually let me talk something about the transportation of carbon dioxide. Actually, carbon dioxide, about 23% of the carbon dioxide entering into the aerosol combines with the globin part of protein to form carbahemoglobin in the form of carbahemoglobin, which is transported to the lungs, and rest 77% it is transported in the form of bicarbonates. Now, carbon monoxide. Let me talk something of the carbon monoxide. Actually, carbon monoxide, children, it is a very poisonous gas, and this has a very opposite effect on the respiratory system or in the process of respiration. What happens, children, is Carbon monoxide, it binds with hemoglobin and it forms what? It forms carboxyhemoglobin. It forms carboxyhemoglobin, and this is a stable compound and it cannot bind with oxygen molecules now. So the amount of hemoglobin available for oxygen transport is reduced if carbon monoxide is present, which results in the deficiency of oxygen and which causes headache, dizziness, nausea and even death. Now there is a term related to, you might have heard about this term, that is called as a mountain sickness. Mountain sickness. Actually, in order to oxygenate the body effectively, breathing rate, even when at rest, has to be increased. This extra ventilation increases the oxygen content in the blood, but not to sea level concentrations. The fall in the oxygenation of blood produces symptoms of mountain sickness. How this mountain sickness occurs? This is actually fall in the oxygenation of blood, which leads to mountain sickness. These symptoms include breathlessness. There can be breathlessness. There can be headache. There can be dizziness. It can be nausea also, vomiting, or it can be a bluish tinge on the skin. Bluish tinge on the skin, nails and lips. So these are the symptoms of mountain sickness. So children, this was all about the respiration. Thank you.